I think Denver hardly needs an introduction. I think that's why we've packed the house tonight, because you all know about him. Denver is with the Owl Research Institute and has studied owls for over 30 years, and he's going to tell us all about that research tonight.
Okay, I think this works. Denny, does that sound okay? Okay, cool. Let me figure this out. Wait one sec, you guys. Where's the pointer thing? Hold it, one sec. Oh, there it is. All right, cool. All right, hi, thanks. First things first, it's not all the time when someone comes to your talk and they bring you some Thuringer or some sausage and a dead owl. And so, all right, Jimmy Carroll, thank you. So that was my first gift, is some meat and a dead solid. So that was pretty cool. So they know what I like. So what I'm going to do, and speaking of that pygmy owl, I'm glad it got away. And those Bohemian waxwings that you talked about are all a favorite food during the wintertime. If you Bohemians used to pick them up at the University of Montana. Normally what I do is I give a talk on a species, as snowy owls is very popular, long-eared, short-eared, pygmy solid, all that stuff. And this year, we kind of changed up our newsletter a little bit, and we were going over stuff. And we said, gosh, wow, we've been doing this a long time. So Gina Clifford, would you stand up for 1 second? So you guys, this is the designer of the newsletter who works for the Owl Institute now. You got to check out the newsletter. You got to get it. It's phenomenal. And with Gina's guidance and helping me through the technologies of the day and all that, we put together this newsletter. It's kind of like a magazine, but we were putting it together. We said, gosh, wow, we did this. Well, we've done that. And all of these years, I don't even know, the years go by so fast. I don't even know what we do anymore. So we thought we would just give you a little overview of the projects, kind of tell you a little bit about them. And, it's a new one. We just put it together this week, really, this program. So let's just see what happens here. All right, just go to the second slide. There we go. Okay. All right. So anyway, I just want you to see some of this here, if I can do it. We've been doing this a long time. So these are like our ongoing studies. And you don't have to read it all, but, 40 plus years in some of these studies, and breeding, and Sawit's got breeding, migration, and wintering. Pygmy owls, 40 plus years. Boreals, 40. Long-eared owls, 37/10 of years. Great grace, 34. Short-ears, 30. You can see what I'm getting at here is we've put a lot of effort into it. Some of these studies are, some of them are really good and intensive. Others are, like, I wouldn't say they're hobbies, but they're kind of like, they're fortuitous until recently when, one of our new biologists has taken on to make them more serious. But we've been doing a lot of these studies, and I'm just going to try to, kind of go over them and just talk a little bit about each study here. It's not as fun as, when I do all the calls of all the owls and all that stuff in the sky dancing of the short ears, stuff like that. But it gives you an idea of the effort that it takes to gather data. And we're pretty hardcore about long-term research. And I just got back from the International Owl Conference. We have that. It used to be every 10 years, every 5 years. Now it's about every 4 years. So I was a banquet speaker there, and I'm going to tell you what I told them on the opening line here and how I got into this. And don't take offense, at this, because it's really my perspective and not necessarily anyone else. But I went back to school at the University of Montana. I was a little bit older, but still in my 20s, so still, not exactly always all there. But I had a few years of experience in the field. And one of the things I noticed right away was my profs, they didn't really go outside very much. If they did, they went out maybe for a week or two if they're lucky in the summer. And then I volunteered for all the agency biologists, and it was kind of similar. Nobody really went outside and went in the field very often. If they did, maybe they accompanied graduate students and they had their names on graduate student papers and things of that sort. And that wasn't what I envisioned as a wildlife biologist or a wildlife researcher. What I envisioned was going in the field, doing long-term studies, kind of coming up with my own questions and doing it for a living. and not just kind of, you know, part-time as a hobbyist. And so it was just a different vision of where I wanted to go. So with, you know, more guts and brains, I started the Owl Institute a long time ago, and now we're clearly probably the most active owl research group in the world. And we have some of the longest data sets on a lot of these species. So that's where it went. And then now I've tried to create an opportunity for young wildlife biologists to be field researchers. You know, if you're lucky enough to get a job in this field, you're going to spend most of your time in an office. You know, you might get out now and then, but I wanted to create something where people could be field biologists. We still have office work to do, write papers, analyze data, but where you're a field researcher and not just, you know, kind of like going out once in a while. So that's how it all came about. All right, so anyway, so the long-eared owl one was kind of interesting. It starts in the winter, and this was like the first question down in Missoula. I was invited to go on the Christmas bird count, and boom, we were out running around, and we started seeing groups of long-eared owls in the thickets around Missoula. And if you can see here, you know, here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one. There's a bunch of them in here. And so the original question back then was, wow, I wonder if they're related. Are they family groups? And of course, you know, that led to 37 years of research. And basically, we answered a whole bunch of questions. But for those of you who are like bird ideas, what we came up with when we started trapping was, and we've published papers on all this stuff. That's a male long-eared owl, and that's a female long-eared owl. And that's pretty distinct. That's what it is. We were told way back when we started, no one can tell the difference in the sexes of long-eared owls. We said, I don't know, how often you go out and try this? Anyhow, we've published all the works and all that stuff, and it's holding true, and now they're doing it in the Great Lakes region, and they're saying, hey, those guys in Montana might be right. We're finding it, we're doing the DNA, predicting the sex, using the models that these guys created, predicting the sex, we're finding out that these guys might be right. Okay, so, you know, that's, you know, just little highlights of each study. Let's see. Okay, and then you got to follow them. So that led to the breeding season. So each question led to another question, which led to, you know, trying to answer those questions, and which leads to 1 year of research, another year of research, another year of research. Am I ever going to answer the question and all that stuff here? So anyway, so this is the long-eared owl here. We follow all of them through to the nesting seasons. And so here's my point on some of this, the long-term research. If I was your typical graduate student and I studied something right here, I'd say, oh yeah, they did pretty good. That was great. If I was your typical graduate student and I studied over here, I'd be like, God, I got to change my thesis topic. I'm not going to get any data. But if you're a long-term researcher, you're going to see the ups and downs over time. And you might conclude they're doing great over here, they're doing lousy over here, but over time you say they're doing okay. And so that's the value of this. That's something we don't do much of anymore. Okay, so short-eared owls. So, you know, I mean, these are pretty good samples, 120 nests, you know, all that, all these owls banded. And so we did a number of things, and what you have to do on each one of these. So we found the long-eared owls doing Christmas bird counts. Can you see when I get in your way there? Am I going to screw this up for people?
You're fine.
Looking okay?
You're good.
So you got to go out and look. So for short ears, everybody knows it now in the Mission Valley, you go out in the spring, you look for the courtship flights, the males dancing, what sky dancing, and then we try to find out where's the sky dancing. Then we look for females, and then we look for nests. And so off and on, we've done this over the years. So this is the short-eared owls here. Go out in the spring, look for sky dancing displays where the males fly up like a moth or a butterfly. Dive, bring their wings under the trunk of the body, and that's the courtship flight that goes on. Sky dancing, males for females, same old thing, just a different group of animals. And so we go out and we try to monitor that. And when we look back at some of the stuff way back when, we had lots of nests and we had good nesting success. But in recent years, it's kind of fluctuating. We're not finding as many nests, and we're having a lot of problem with predation. So one of the things Beth Mendelson, one of our biologists, has been trying to do is figure out what's going on. So we have egg predators. Okay, who's doing it? Is it skunks? Is it raccoons? Is it foxes? Is it coyotes, etc.? And then we have predation on chicks as well. And so what we've done is we've set up a series of cameras, it's all in the Mission Valley, to try to decipher it. And it's really hard you know, the avian predators are difficult to find, the mammalian predators are difficult to find, and you almost have to have two different systems to determine each one here. But we've been trying to figure that out, and surprisingly, Beth just gave the talk at the international conference. Coyotes, to our surprise, have been eaten. I took the slide out because it shows a coyote nest, you know, just munching down chicks this big, just gulping them all down. It's kind of gross, so I left it out. But this is what we're trying to get at. So again, long-term research, various methods, questions coming up, trying to figure out how to answer those questions. All right, now, do I do this again? This is supposed to be
Do it one more
live.
time.
What's that?
Do it one more time. I think you'll
Okay.
be good.
And this will just show you, you know, just one of our camera shots. So some of the nests make it, but most are having a lot of trouble, and it does appear to be predation, both avian and mammalian. Okay, so pygmy owls, you know, hard owl to find their nest. Easy owl when in the wintertime it comes to your bird feeders and it eats all your birds at the feeders. But technically you're still feeding birds, right? So that's okay. So anyway, so the pygmy owl nest, and really difficult to find. But what we do is we go out and do the surveys, and, you know, I don't know if you heard the call there, but, you know, and then we track them down, we try to find their nests, and we try to monitor things. Okay, and this is, you know, this is not very many people have ever seen the inside of a pygmy owl nest. And this is working on, we took the back off and were able to look at it. We had a specific question on synchronous hatching and synchronous growth in pygmy owls, which we're finding out is an exception to the general owl rule, with all the chicks hatching about the same 24-hour period or so. All the chicks grow at about the same rate. We kind of discovered this back in the 80s, and now we've got, using technology and all that, we're kind of honing in on it. And then we monitor as they come out of the nest. This is just one of the adults feeding one of the chicks. Okay, and then here you can go, Steve Hiro, I don't know if you know him. Steve is one of the founders of the International Heart Institute. He volunteered for us 29 years ago, and I actually assisted him in heart surgery one time by standing there, but anyway, that's another story. And so Steve has probably become the country's expert on cardiac surgeon on the mating behavior of pygmy owls. So you can see that on YouTube there. Again, I'm just trying to give you a quick overview of all these things that we've been doing. Saw-whet owls, you know, most saw-whet owl studies are from nest boxes. Nest boxes are biased, even though they provide a lot of access and good information, they're biased. And so almost all of the nests now that we have found have been in natural sites, which I'm going to get to, is how important these natural sites are for owls, particularly cavities for small owls like the saw-whet owl. And when it says 2,000 plus owls banded, that also includes our migration study, which many of you have been on. All right, so we go out and we listen for the saw-whets, doing the surveys, you know that. You know, the truck backing up. We hone in on that. It's coming from the same general location over the survey period. Let's concentrate in there and look for nests. All right, so we try to find nests. Saw-whets are really good. Yeah, we're very receptive to whacking the tree, you know, so we go out there and we see a tree, we go over there and we hit it, crack it, boom, and they pop their heads out. Pygmy owls don't do it, boreal owls do, saw-whet owls don't, screech owls don't. So it's a good method once you kind of zero in on the area to go and find saw-whet owls. But just remember that cavity there. And then we try to get the adults banded and try to get the chicks banded. Oh, let's see, go back one. All right, gotta go back. Okay, so this is another part of our study, is our migration studies in saw-whets. And several of you in here have been there. We've had some really good volunteers help us this year. And so 200 people have showed up this year on the saw-whet migration study to see our team in action. We have a young lady, Haley Madden from Vancouver, BC. She led the team this year. She's been with us a while, working snowy owls, long-eared owls, etc. She led the team this year. We had an open house on Friday nights, and then we had volunteers on several other nights to help out on the project. And it's become a real plus for the Owl Institute and for the Flathead Lake Biological Station. And this is our youngest, Beth. That's her daughter, working with solid owls here. All right, so the point to remember here is that, you know, the peak of migrations end in September and October or so, and now we've been to several thousand of these solid owls. And the lake is turning out to be kind of a neat little place. We got a little lucky with its selection last year, and this year we've banded 180 solids, including some that have been banded by other people that we've recaptured there. All right, boreals. Now this here is very different. We do the same thing. We go out, we do the surveys, you know.
What's a boreal?
When I first started doing these in the 80s, I was like the only one that went out because you couldn't get any biologists to go out at night and all that stuff. So you go out there and you go to Lolo Pass, you'd snowmobile in 10 miles or whatever by yourself most of the time. And there's nothing going on, 6 feet of snow, it's February, it's cold. You're back then, counting 10 satellites in a night was a big deal. Now it's like 30 an hour going by and all that. But anyway, and then you hear that in the background. Reverberating through there. So that was the boreal owl study. And then when we started discovering them, the Forest Service put up boxes. So we monitor the boxes after we do the surveys. And this is what it looks like. So this is a nest box study. Even though I said it was biased, they put them up, we monitor them. We've only found 2 natural sites. But why? It's because we're programmed to check nest boxes along the road 18 feet facing this direction every quarter mile. Instead of going out in the woods and trying to find the trees that the owls use and measuring those trees so we can tell forest managers what's needed to maintain natural nest sites for small cavity nesting owls, which we'll get to. All right, and this is just boreals. They all get banded. You can see a little band right here, but also, you know, we think of snowy owls as being well adapted to the Arctic with their heavily feathered feet. This is a boreal owl that lives a high elevation, spruce fir forest, lots of fur, and you can see how heavily feathered their feet are, again, indicating that's where they live, and that's maybe where they stay during the wintertime. Okay, our great gray owls now I've been monitoring nests for a long time, but we brought on Beth Mendelson, our biologist there, a senior biologist now, and she has taken it from just recording stuff to more of a research project in the last several years here. So she deserves a lot of credit for this, but we still have a lot of data on great grays, and it's the same thing. You can't just, here, I'll show you, actually. So what we're doing is we're using these, you know, the ARU technologies where they go out in the field, they put these recorders up and they listen for great gray owls. I think it's great, you know, but to me, an owl survey is actually going out and doing an owl survey, you know, but we're getting good information with this stuff here. But so the technology is helping us, but let's not abandon the field just for the technology. Nonetheless, we get all these vocalizations and then we go in. You can't just say, okay, we heard one, great gray owls are fine. And I know like the state has these surveys going on right now where they're trying to determine great gray owl habitat. It's good. And they're finding a lot of stuff, but you can't just say everything is fine. You have to find out, are they reproducing? They're not reproducing. How are they doing over time? That's the next step. The first step is finding them. And so this is what it looks like when we go in and try to find them. Again, going back to like kind of this theme kind of developed in the past couple of days of how important nest sites are and how important that is to forest management. And so like the owls, the small cavity nesting owls, the great gray owls, you know, they need big old broken top trees. They'll still nest in stick nests or they'll nest in mistletoe, but I do believe that these are the preferred sites if we can find them and if we can maintain them. So we try to get to those sites, find the nest, band the chicks, record all that, and then record a bunch of data. Hawk owls. Now this is a done project, you know, and everybody used to run up to Glacier to find the hawk owls, but so we found, you know, 36, actually 37 nests. One was used twice, banded over 72. It's probably the most comprehensive study on hawk owls, certainly in the lower 48, but it might be one in all of Canada and Alaska and all that stuff. So going out, doing your surveys, it's the same thing. So you're talking Glacier National Park. We can't take snowmobiles in there. This is all cross-country skiing, hiking, snowshoeing, and I made those kids work hard on that. But trying to find nests, listen for birds, finding nests, or oftentimes you didn't find a nest. All you found was a young hawk owl that came out of a nest somewhere nearby, and you never knew where the nest was, but you knew that they nested nearby because you have these flightless chicks. So we would track them all down either way and get them in bed. Billy, you here? Oh, you didn't show up? Okay, this is Billy, a good friend of mine. We started out wildlife together a long time ago. But anyway, this is what it's like, getting all of them banded. So during the course of that hawk owl study, which was 20-something years going, we banded 72 owls, and we went in there and worked really hard. We only ever captured one again that had a band on it. Again, kind of arguing that these are kind of nomadic. You know, nomadic birds, they hang out for a while, they move into these burns. After it comes down, the grass grows up, the vole populations increase, the hawk owls move in. It used to be said that they would stay for 3 or 4 years and move on. We did find that the tenure in the glacier, at least in a lot of these areas, was up to 8 to 9 to 10 years, except population turned over so much every year. So how many birds? And this is just the type of stuff we're recording. Not that this means anything right now to you, but it's not just going out and having fun and catching owls, abandoning them and stuff like that. It's also recording data, trying to get meaningful information so that conservationists and resource managers can use that, you know, for conservation and management. Okay, and this is our best, you know, this is the study that everyone, yeah, I get a little tired of talking about that. So at the international conference, they said, we talk about something else, so I did long ears. And but this is our big study. You know, this is a cover, National Geographic. This is Geographic, you know, that stuff and all that. And so this is super popular, and it's the most popular owl in the world, and maybe one of the most popular birds in the world. But it's been going on a long time, and it's the same thing. You know, going out, finding nests, monitoring nests. How are they doing? You know, what are they eating? What's their nest sites? Are they producing young? How many young are they producing? And then it gets to a point where we don't know. After these chicks fly and leave the nest, and we really don't know what's going on. But nonetheless, we have good data up to that point. And this just shows you the study area. I'm going to talk about 2 things here real quick. And one is, again, if you were, you know, that graduate student and you studied something for, you know, whatever a graduate student does, a couple of weeks for a few seasons, you'd say, oh, it was a great year, 54 nests, all right, great. And then if you came over here, you'd say, oh, wow, 5 years in a row, I had almost nothing, this stinks. And you went back over here and you said, oh, yeah, they're doing great. But if you looked at them over time, you would find out that the population is declining in our study area for reasons we're not sure of. And another thing too, to get back to, you just can't go out and count nests. If you went out and counted these nests and said there's 54 nests, wow, had a band a year. But of those 54 nests, by fall, we find out over 20 of them failed. And the others only produce 1 or 2 young per nest. Whereas you go down over here to right here, let's see if I can get this without screwing it up, all right. These 35 nests, every one of those nests fledged 3 to 5 young. And that's when we get those big eruption years. So depends when you study, how long you study, in order to draw some meaningful conclusions. And also too, just fortuitously, when we started the snowy owl study, you know, it was all about lemmings. That was on my mind. Well, we're going to have to monitor lemmings. So we started our lemming trapping, and it's removal sampling. So we use snap traps. We have a standardized method and all that stuff. And we look at the life of snowy owls with the life of lemmings. And so here's the lemming data. So, you know, it fluctuates. I wouldn't call it cycles. You know, I know we always like to say everything's a cycle, and I don't buy it anymore. I did when I was in college, but I don't anymore. And, but nonetheless, the lemmings look somewhat stable. So why are the owls drastically going down? I don't know the answer to that yet. We're trying to figure that out. We're looking at climate in relation to this and that. And I'm even looking now at body masses of lemmings. Have they changed over time? And they're not providing a bunch of meat for each investment, you know. All right, barn owls. This is kind of a new one. We've always kept track of things here. We have a graduate student now that's working on it. We've had a couple of graduate students over the years. A lot of work. And but we have this young guy now, and he came to us, and he seems like he could take care of himself, which I like quite a bit. And so we're providing a lot of backing to that. And he's going out and doing surveys all over western Montana region and all that stuff. And he's found quite a few actually barred owls this year. And it's the same thing. So you go out and you do your surveys. You know, all that. Pinpoint the area, go in, try to find the birds. Try to find nests, if you can find nests. Now, look at this nest here. I just want you to keep this in mind as we move forward. That's what we call a chimney. So they go in, they go down in that hole there where they nest, important for barred owls. Okay, winter raptor survey. So back in the 80s or so, when I used to come up here from Missoula into the Mission Valley, just to go bird watching because it was a good place to go, and I was interested in raptors. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you would notice all these rough-legged hawks were going east to the Mission Mountains. And, you know, myself, Dale Becker, a few other people, maybe Dan Casey at that time, some of the other birders, you know, kind of had the same impression. Wow, every evening, about 3 o'clock in the winter, these rough-legged hawks just start shooting towards the mountains. And then we started narrowing it down and said, boy, they're all going just east of Ronan. They're going over here. So I went in and we ended up finding the roost, and we got a student at that time. He went and found the specific trees. And it turns out it's the highest concentration wintering roosts of rough-legged hawks in the world, and up to 300 rough-legged hawks could go back in there every evening and hang out during a good vole year. Numbers do fluctuate. So anyway, and then Beth took over here. When she came on, I couldn't really do what I wanted just because we're so busy. I told Beth her first project when she came on was to standardize this and make it something. And now we're into our 5th year, and Friday's our first survey of the year and all that. But I mean, we've recorded in those 5 years over 8,600 plus raptors in the Mission Valley. We believe the Mission Valley hosts probably 1,000 raptors every winter in there. And we have 5 simultaneous transects. I can talk to you about it some other time. But our first one is coming up, and we take volunteers. So this is what kind of materialized out of putting this together for you, out of looking at our data, looking at what we've done. The thing that jumped out at me was snags. And back when Riley McClellan did his work on pileated woodpeckers up in the park, and I was really interested in those dead trees, and it must have been his influence. I'm sure it was. And I said, gosh, yeah, dead trees. I never really gave it a lot of thought, but way back, you know, this is in the 80s or so, I started saying, yeah, dead trees are important, and they're really important for owls. So if we look at just, you know, the owls in the US, you know, of the 9 species that are obligate, that means they have to have either natural woodpecker holes to nest in. 6 in Montana, 6 of those species. So you got eastern screech owl, western screech owl, flathead owl, pygmy owl, boreal owl, and saw-whet owl that have to have a natural or a woodpecker hole in order to nest. And then if you look at some of these other species, and you got 4 species that will use big, large cavities or chimneys, as I said. And on Montana, the barn owl, which I'll show you, and the barred owl. And then you got a couple other species that use broken tops, and we'll see more of that, great horns and great grays. And you got 1 species that uses either a cavity or a large cavity or a broken top, and that's the hawk owl, a little more versatile than the other species. So I want to kind of show you that. Here's your snag, right? Your typical snag. Why do we cut them all down? We cut them down because they're ugly. We cut them down because maybe they're diseased. Maybe safety reasons for, you know, foresters and all that stuff there, firewood cutting and all that. But we tend to cut these things down when they are so important to so many things, besides owls, when I'm talking about them. And this is one that we stumbled for. This is pathetic. This is an old dead tree that hardly anything will use, but it's saved as a wildlife tree. And so what we're trying to do with this is identify the characteristics of the snags used by cavity nesting owls, so we can provide that information for foresters. And we just got an email the past 2 days from the Flathead Forest and some big cut coming out of the Swan. And they're really interested in the snags for great gray owls. What do we have for data? So it takes time to get the data. It takes time to get it in the brain of people that is important. And then you got to go from there. So one of the ways we used to do it was just hike, whack the trees, take spurs, climb the trees with our spurs, somehow look in the cavity with a little dental mirror, look in the cavity with the flashlight. Oh yeah, it's in there, it's not in there, it's got 3 eggs, you know. Then we started dragging ladders. Then we bought our first peeper camera, which was actually pretty expensive. And this was it here. This is my buddy Hog Dick here. He's gone now, but he was a good old biker guy. And he would come out in the field with us. And what we would try to do is find these owl nests after doing the survey. So here it is. There's a flammulated owl. All right, a little branch rotted off here, the flammulated owl's nesting in that fir tree there. Here's an eastern screech owl over on the prairie. All right, so you got like a feeding hole that was enlarged and something modified it from a pileated woodpecker to an eastern screech owl. There's an aspen stand here with a pileated nest hole, western screech owl. Okay, this is either a sapsucker hole or sometimes natural sites, little tiny holes for like the pygmy owls, okay? There's a big pileated hole with the sawwood in it, and you see different tree types, cottonwoods, aspens, firs. And this is an old burned out cottonwood tree from the fires up in Glacier, and the hawk owl's got his choice of what hole it goes in there, and then it comes all the way down to the bottom, because sometimes you have these holes up here and you think they're good, and you want to save the tree, but there's nothing in it. All right, but in this case here, the base was right there. Or this broken top, and I was talking about the hawk owl. So right up on the top of the crotch of this tree, there's a chick right there. All right, and so anyway, this isn't anything, but, and our sample size are a lot larger now, but what my point on this here is when we start looking at these snags, we find out that, you know, the Forest Service, and nothing against them or anything, but they would just say, you know, you see, all right, we're gonna save all these snags, gonna save these snags for snag nesting species. But when we look at it more closely, the first thing we find is not every snag is created equal. So what looks like the beautiful tree, and you stick the peeper camera inside, it goes all the way down. There's no way it can nest, but on the outside, it looks really good. Or the inside of it's all jagged, or there's a branch, an old branch thing sticking in the middle, and it's not available. So that's what we're saying, they're not all created equal. Then as we start looking at the different species and the characteristics, what we find is a pygmy owl has different site characteristics than a solid owl, or different tree species than another species. And so it's not like you save one big tree and all the cavity nesting owls are okay. And this is just some of the stuff, you know, we record. Many other variables. I just wanted to give you, you know, just some samples. All right, or broken tops like this here. You know, you go in the woods here and you see a big broken top tree, but those are important sites for something like a great horn, which can nest in a stick nest or mistletoe or almost anywhere. But also big old broken tops like that are important for a great horn. Or a great gray. All right, you look here, this broken top Doug fir. Oh, shoot. All right. I don't know about this. Okay. All right, so anyway, and you can see that the great gray, and the chick's right here, right under the female. And we know great grays will use mistletoe and will use red-tailed hawkneck 60 feet up in the trees, but I'm not so convinced that you know that's the desired nest site. I think the desired nest site is low within the forest where they evolved, low, big old broken top trees. But those are the ones that we tend to get rid of. All right, you might consider this barn a nest box, okay? And so something like the barn owl is a pretty big owl, all right? And we don't have those big old trees anymore with really big cavities in them, particularly like they had back east for barn owls. And so we all know the barn owls have been living in barns ever since, you know, people have been building barns with little holes in the top to keep the mice down. So what we have found in our studies here is that we find cavities along the rivers now is where we find our barn owls. All right, so you kind of keep that in mind, not that, you know, someone's going to go chop down the cliff, but nonetheless, if you're looking for barn owls and trying to get characteristics along the rivers, especially where the root system has rotted out of a big tree and they can climb the holes and then they can nest. Okay, and then, you know, of course, we kind of publish our papers and all that stuff. We're not as publish crazy as many people because we don't have time. But nonetheless, we get papers out. The only thing that I think is important of these, and you'll see it in that newsletter. Make sure you get the newsletter, guys. It's really nice. But read this one here on expertise and expert performance. What it takes to reach that level. And very few people reach that level. This is me in the Arctic. It was cold. It was in November. I think it was 28 below on that day. But anyhow. And some of the other things we do, like tonight, all right? Outreach, public outreach, highlights. And so did everybody heard last year about that snowy owl showed up in California. All over the world. It's in the New York Times, LA. I mean, it's just everywhere. So California Fish and Game called me up, said, will you come down and do a talk? Yeah, whatever. And so you pay, I'll go. And so anyway, so I went down there, and it was like during COVID. And so, people were staying home, but 300 people showed up, 600 people online. And I gave a talk on the California snowy owl. It turned out it left. 2 days before I got there, the thing left, but they're doing a movie on it now on how this owl brought the community together. I mean, thousands and thousands of people came to see this owl. And I went down there and it looked like if you guys were all houses, that's what it looked like. And the owl was sitting in the middle on top of someone's roof. That's where it spent its days. But there's a Hollywood producer called me. It's a long story now. We're thinking about a Netflix series on owls and all that stuff. But nonetheless, it brought the community together, and there's a little story coming out on pretty quick. I just talked to the producer yesterday, actually. And these are some of the other things that we do. As you can see, the blog posts or presentations, the e-letters and things of that sort. And right now, with Gina on, she takes care of all this stuff, and it's just so helpful for me. We all know this book, right? Everybody knows this New York Times best-selling book, What an Owl Knows, Jennifer Ackerman. So Jennifer called us up, came out, spent a week with us. All right, we are throughout this book. She sent me a beautiful email today. And she got to do real field biology. It wasn't just to review the literature and write about cool things of owls, interview people on the phone. She came out, she spent a week with us. She was up and down the hills. Beth's tough. And Beth just took her up the mountains, down the mountains, up the mountains, down the mountains. And Jennifer's like, oh, this for a great owl. And so, and she went for sawwhits, but the thing that she wanted most was to go in the field and see a longer owl. For some reason, longer owl was her thing. And of course, we made that happen. We were working, we had a nest, we had a work nest, so we captured this female, and a couple of young girls that worked for us, got her and stuff, and we gave her to Jennifer. And Jennifer, we said, sit right here. And we left. And we went and did our thing for 20 minutes. And we were just joking with each other. So we own her now. And she came to the International Owl Conference and saw my talk and all that, and has become a good friend and supporter of the ORI. And this was it. So this was the talk that I just did. It was about 120 from 16 countries. And so I did the banquet address on 37 years of long-term owl research. The point of all this is, in addition to the research, is all these other things that we do to communicate and make the ORI grow. Live cams. This is kind of cool, you guys. Hang in there. All right, I know I put long johns on. I'm sweating. So anyhow, so we work with the Annenberg Foundation out of California on this. All right, and so this is what our live cams look like. And so right here, this is just one that roost I showed you the long-ears earlier. Here's a little long-eared chick right here. And so we maintain these 6 cams. They're kind of seasonal, or sometimes it's weather dependent. So there's a lot of things that go on and how many are active at one time. But nonetheless, you can view them, and you'll see it in our newsletter. And so this is one of the ones here with our long-ears. One of our winter roost sites. This is what the cameras, so we're using technology to help in our research, but we're still going out. We're not just being totally dependent. Oh, there's a bunch, we don't have to go out, we know how many are there. We want to know how old they are, what sex they are, and I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, and then we can use the infrared at night. And new to us was that some of them don't even go out at night. And go hunting, for one reason or another, who knows? I'm full, I'm a good hunter, I don't need to go. I'm tired, I'm sleeping in today. I mean, we don't know the reasons, but some don't go out. So we're learning a lot. And then what we're doing next is what I just said. We're going to try to find out who they are, okay? So we know how when we capture them, we can age them pretty well, we can sex them very well. But so, what are they doing? I mean, who are these two? Are they friends? You know how friends are. Oh, he's my friend. And later the friend becomes the boy. All right. Or about this guy back here. Is this the dominant one? And is he hiding back here? And you guys in the front might get killed before I do. Or sex related, so we're trying to figure all that out, sex, age, social positioning. So what we're gonna do, we experimented last year, is we've used fluorescent magic markers, and we color their white tuft here, different colors. And we're gonna capture, predict, and see. So do these guys always roost together? You know, will they eventually mate? Or does this one steal information from that one? Or does this one share information? Do they follow each other? There's all kinds of social things going on that we're trying to figure out. It's kind of cool stuff. All right, so this is our male from this year. This is the value of the cams too. So this male, he's got a nest over to the right side here. All right, and you can't see it, but he was fluorescent green. It's more off. So he was fluorescent green. And so he's sleeping. But something startles him. And I'm just gonna let you have this, and you can identify it on your own. It's not a Bohemian waxwing. Don't compress. The threat's gone. Cooper time. Okay, here's another. This is what the cameras offer. And we do a lot of interpretation of those cameras. And there, our snowy owl camera is the only one in the world. We've been able to pull it off 4 times. The only one in the world to see live breeding snowy owls. And I'm just going to show you some of the things that we see up there. Oh, no. All right, that's it. Thanks a lot. Yeah, you can support us. We need a lot of help. We need all kinds of equipment, trucks, cars, snowmobiles, plows, satellite antennas, you know, you name it, we need it. So any questions, anyone? I know it's hot. You've been here a long time. Yes, ma'am.
My snowies traveled so far from where they. I mean, like Ireland in the Pacific.
So why do snowy owls travel so far? Do we know that? I don't know if we know that. There's a lot of hypotheses about that. Generally, when we have what we call those eruption years, if that's even the correct term, but nonetheless we use it, they have a really good breeding year. So lemmings were high in the breeding grounds, and they produced a number of young and a number of young to fledging. And they're innate, we forget they're innately programmed to migrate, number one. Right? But why, you know, people say, oh, there's social dominance. The more aggressive females drive off the, you know, the smaller males, and they drive them. But why go 1,000 miles when you only have to go across the field? You know, so that doesn't really add up, you know. Yeah, that's the social dominance hypothesis, that they're starving and they're just on the move searching for food. You know, the data indicates that they're not all starving. Some starve, I mean, some birds all starve to death during the wintertime, but that doesn't add up either, you know. The best explanation really is that, one, is they're innately programmed to migrate, and 2, is that when we have such large numbers that they have a good breeding year. So lemmings didn't decline, and we really don't know on the breeding grounds if lemmings decline, because no one's doing the sampling at the time the owls are leaving. We trap until right at the end of August, but the owls don't really move out till the end of September into early October. And so what are the small mammals doing at that time? Nobody really knows. And so we don't know if did they decline, or was there so much snow is that you just can't get them because they're significant. So the answers aren't quite there. We've got a big paper where we address like 15 of these hypotheses. And the only thing that we really can say is that they're just, they migrate because they're innately programmed to migrate. And when we have big eruption years, it's because they had a really good breeding year. And the biologists and naturalists and ornithologists in the 1930s and the 1940s, they asked the exact same questions we're asking today. They postulated the same things that we postulate today. They concluded both things. They said they're starving. They said, well, wait a minute, maybe they're not, because most of the young of the birds are young of the year, but they get very little credit. Today, the young kids say, I'm the first to discover that, which is totally, it's because they don't read. And anyhow, so I hope that answered that question. Yes.
How many barn owls and barn owl nests have you found in Montana?
How many barn owls and barn owl nests have we found in Montana? A few. I'm not gonna tell you where, or any of that. One of the things that we noticed is that everyone goes to our research sites. And we've learned that over the years, the Audubon groups, we always find out where the owls are doing research, and they go there, the photographers go there. So we try to hide our stuff, and then people get mad at us and all that. So I'm not gonna tell you. but they're here, and you should go out and find them, and then tell me. Because that's how it works. Anybody else? Yes.
Oh, yeah. They're pretty exposed out there. What keeps them from being killed by hawks and other predators?
Okay, what keeps the snowy owls from being preyed upon and killed by other things if they're nesting on an open tundra is what you talk about nesting. They're big, they're powerful, and they're aggressive. I can't tell you how many times I've been hit by snowy owls defending the nest. And they're very, very aggressive. I mean, they nest on the ground, all right? So you think they're vulnerable to Arctic foxes, and they just whack the heck out of Arctic foxes that come in. I mean, they come in and whack, and you hear the fox go, "Arr! Arr! Arr!" I've got a shot of a woman walking her black lab. She's got two 70-pound black labs. She's walking down the road up in Barrie, it is a community, walking down the road. Male snowy owl flies 500 yards across the tundra, hits the first black lab right in the back, and it turns around and bolts under the truck. The second black lab, he says, I'm going to take on this owl. The owl comes in and hits that, and he goes underneath. I've seen him hit caribou, and I've been hit so many times. And when those females hit you, they're really big and they're powerful. And when they hit you, I mean, it hurts. So I was working with National Geographic on one, and so Laura was working with me, going twos. All right, and I always try to get tall, athletic people to work for me because the snowies always go for the tallest first. And so the University of Montana Grizz player worked for us one year. He got whacked all the time. But anyhow, and so I'm walking out there, and this female hit me hard from behind, and they always attack from behind. And I turned to bark at Laura, and she was back there 100 yards with the photographer because I got it. And he had asked her, to draw behind because he needed a picture of me being hit. And so, but they're very, they can't drive off a polar bear, but they can annoy it. When the caribou come through, they'll go out and they'll defend and they'll whack the caribou, but all they're doing is just changing the direction. The Arctic fox is a different story, potential threat, predator. When we're working and the owls are hitting us, if a glaucous gull comes in, the owls leave us immediately after the glaucous gull, indicating it might be more of a threat than we are, stuff like that. But they hit pretty good. I got hit one time. So, you wear a lot of clothes because it's cold up there, and you got a lot of clothes on. So I got my Carhartts on, my long johns, and this and that. And we're working a nest, and I don't know, this female, she came in, she hit me right in the butt. And I mean, hard, and she went through. And I went home, I had like 4 puncture holes in my butt. And so the downside was that it hurt. The upside was the first time a female grabbed my butt in a long time. I set you up for that. Okay. Yeah, someone else had a question over here. I thought I saw one. Okay. Oh, yes, sir.
But the expected open winter we're supposed to have, with El Nino, we've expected we will see fewer snows in the mission and Flathead.
Do I expect it we'll see fewer snowies in the Mission and Flathead given the El Nino that we're supposed to have? Is that correct? The question, yeah. I don't know. I just came off the breeding season. We had 0 nests in Barrow this year. So in order to have a big push of birds, like an eruption migration, you have to have good breeding. Now, how they might have done on Wrangel Island, Russia, which is, I suspect, when we get them coming down the Pacific coast there, I suspect they're coming from somewhere in Alaska, maybe the Western Canadian islands, or over Russia. And they're coming across and migrating down the coast there. So I don't know what happened in Wrangell this year. I would say probably not. But there's always a couple birds that are young of the year. So somewhere they're breeding. It may not be in large numbers, but somewhere they're breeding. Right now, if I just looked at our Barrow data, I would say, based on Barrow, we're not going to see it. I mean, I would love to see a big year. They say about every 10 years or so it happens in our valley. We all remember Polson, you know, and all that stuff. So yes. Do we ban them? Yeah, we try to. It's difficult to catch them, you know, and it's time consuming, but we do try to ban some of the adults. We get most of the chicks banded up on the breeding grounds. We've got over 800 banded up there. And we've got some interesting information. We put the first satellite ever in the world on an owl, on 6 snowy owls back in 99, 2000 or so. Well, we've kind of abandoned that a little bit. So we do try, but they're hard to catch and it's time consuming. But if we could, we would, you know, and I'd like to do some of the satellite stuff in the future, but I'm not satisfied with just inferences. So, you know, oh, they're over here. And there's really cool movement stuff. I mean, there's really neat stuff. They're all over the place. But we're making inferences and not going and doing ground truthing. We say, oh, it's breeding up here. Well, how do you know it's breeding? Well, the locations indicate it's pretty much in the same area for the right period of time. You know, I tend to believe that. But how many breeding, how did it do? Did it produce 5 young, 10 young, 0, 1 young? Were there 1 nest? Were there 50 nests? And so we've kind of used the technology to give us a really cool insight into stuff, but we've kind of like abandoned going out and figuring it all out. So yes, sir.
I hate to see the something, but gray owls in that size between, I know the female bigger, male. There's coloring on the head, can you tell individual owls by the face, coloration, and then the young owls, and they have points on their feathers, when do they differ?
Okay, so the question was about great gray owls. Can you tell differences based on any kind of plumage traits? And then if you look at the feathers, can you tell the differences in ages in relation to feather wear? Beth would be the person to talk to with that, because you can with the feather wear. You can tell the ages of the feathers, the molt sequence, and you can get a relative idea of how old they are. And then you can tell with a little bit of the tapering and the white on the tail feathers. So if it's like a first year or second year. And Beth is much better at that than I am. As far as recognizing them with specific traits like a male long-eared and a female long-eared, I don't think we're there yet. But we've been trying to explore that, see if we can recognize differences in sexes. And certainly, as you said, the females are larger than the males. Yes.
So I was up at the bio station at that saw wet and they used the black light,
Mhm.
the protein. And can you do that with other owl species or is that just specific to the saw wet?
Okay, so the question was talking about the saw banding station, and someone years ago came up with putting a black light on the underwing, and you can see what they have, the porphyrins, and the porphyrins shine like a pink or a purple. And that's an indication of new feathers versus old feathers. So new feathers will have bright pink, like, I don't know, like that purple coat there. And then it'll have that, and the newer feathers won't have that. So you can say these are new, these are old. So if it's uniform across underneath, it would be a hatchet bird. First with the saw-whets, first year bird, all uniform because they all shine. But with long-eareds, and also if you catch them today, you can see the porphyrin color. It wears with time, but we can catch the birds and we can see old feather, new feathers got pink. It's different with the long-eareds though, because the first year birds, we don't see it at all during the daytime, but we can see pink on the new feathers that come in, and then the old feathers are white, and that's how we can tell after hatch birds and all that stuff. So it doesn't work on all of them, or at least it hasn't been kind of solidified in all of them like it has in the solids, but it's a good technique. But if you were out in the daytime, you can see it yourself, you know, you can see the generations of feathers. I'll take one more, and then I'll just hang on if anybody wants. Yes. I'll take two. I'll get back to you, Karen.
Great, will they stay in the area next over the week or 3 days?
Yeah, will great grays stay in the same nest area over time, or will they change? A little of both. You know, we have territories that have been occupied for years and years, and then all of a sudden the birds are gone. We can't find them anywhere. So what reasons, you know, that kind of influence that movement, I don't know, you know, as of now. Maybe the nest site isn't very good anymore. Maybe there's not enough food around. You know, it's hard to know, but they certainly are capable of moving several miles.
I had a parent who had
Okay, and she had a pair hanging out of her house in Ferndale. One of the things we think that happens is that males and the females will hang out together in the wintertime. So it's a good, you know, kind of keep an eye on them if they're still around, stuff like. Normally what happens with most of these species is that the male and female come together. It's the same old thing, you know, male wants to mate, got resources, you get mated, you know, all that. And then what happens after that though, is that females are like, you know, I'm sitting on this egg. I've been in this house for a long time. And now it's up to you. And we find out in many of these species, the females leave. And then the males raise the young. So males, we don't get all the credit we deserve here, you guys. And the females go off. Some may go and mate with someone else and do it again, which there's not a lot of data with that, but there's some. But yeah, so gee, if you've got them there, you know, they might be, you know, they come back together, I guess it was in the fall, and they might maybe have a pair. And listen for the, I can't.
where you had a high proportion of females, about 15% that you have to be females. What do you think the males are doing? Are they in breeding territory?
Yeah, this is an old question that, you know, that I don't know if anyone knows the answer to. And that is that during these solid owl migrations, it tends to be females that are moving through here based on some genetic analysis, but a lot of morphological traits between the sexes. And we seem to be finding that at the biostation as well, is that the birds that we measure and weigh and all that fit the female class. Now we're going to try to back that up with genetics, and we've been taking blood and all that. Theories behind it are, you know, females tend to be the dispersing sex in birds, males, the philopatric sex, just the opposite in mammals. And so one of the theories is that maybe nest sites are hard to find. So males maybe don't migrate as far, or they stay in the area where the nests are, so they can be the first one to grab that nest when the breeding season comes and the females migrate back. One of the ideas behind it, you know, but no one knows for sure, is there a difference in sex ratio? And how would we know that if only females migrate and males stay? We might not get a true measure of that, which is why you probably want to go to the nest and sex all the birds that way and see if there's a, like when we do snowy owls, even though we see predominantly males in the winter grounds, or young males and adult males, but when we do the sexing at the nest, we find a 50-50 sex ratio. So I don't know the answer. I kind of like, what we're going to try to do is go back to the breeding sites and go in there and see if we can catch males during the winter, see if they're hanging out there, and go from there. So it's an open-ended question, and everyone's trying to figure out. No one really knows for sure. Okay, I'll hang out, you guys. Thanks a ton. I'll chat with you again.